It's been 18 hours, 365 days since we put ourselves away. We stay home every night and also day, 'cause we had to put ourselves away. Since COVID-19, I can do whatever I want, unless I'm wearing a mask to it. That's all I got. I really don't have more than that. I hate my biggest complaint about the COVID-19 pandemic is the myriad of like song parodies that have sort of made light of the fact that people are dying everywhere.
I thought for an honest to God fucking second that was a real new Dave Matthews Band song. I was sold that you might have actually brought me around to getting into Dave Matthews Band for the first time in my life.
Wow, that's I'm gonna take that as high praise for myself, because did I sound like Dave Matthews?
Dave Matthews Band.
All right, so hi, welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host Devin Decker. Joining me, my host companion Sejan Sarowick. Sejan,
avid hater of Dave Matthews. Hello.
You know,
Winn-Dixie.
One of my earliest like gigs as a sound guy was for a Dave Matthews cover band.
Well, that's like being a Grateful Dead cover band. You don't. Why would you do that? You're just a jam band. I could be a jam band, and then I could call myself a cover band for a million different bands.
I don't know. It introduced me to some really cool people, like friends that I had for years going forward. So like, I'm thankful I was part of it, but you wanted like the proof in the pudding of what you just said is the fact that that band didn't have a clever name like Ants Marching or Crash into some other Dave Matthews Band song. I've already exhausted the ones that I know, and I cannot
amazing, by the way.
What?
Dave Matthew Ants. Like, there's so many good ones.
Yeah. I cannot stress that I ran sound for this band for multiple gigs, and I got two. I got two Dave Matthews songs. They called themselves the Dave Matthews Cover Band. That was the name they went with.
Okay, I am going to step up to the defense of this group of people that I had never met, and I am going to say that if I was making a cover band, my first instinct is to try and make a name that pays homage to the original band's name, is still my own, and is clever. Those are like the three tent poles of a good cover band name, right? And the problem is that with Dave Matthews Band, you don't have many ways to go when he just named it after him fucking self. Rude. Anyway, so to call themselves the Dave Matthews Cover Band is pretty good, actually. The only thing better, I think, would be the Dave Matthews Band Cover Band. I think that they needed band in there twice to make it like a joke.
That little bit of redundancy would have been nice. I don't know. I know that I did a bunch of charity gigs with them, and they helped raise a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
And like, it was fun. It was also, I've ended up doing like audio work for a lot of bands. I mean, I do a podcast now because I learned how to do audio, and they were my favorite band because they would actually invite me to the practices, so I would have some idea about what songs they'd be playing and how they sounded.
No, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that people don't think about with tech, is they think that like tech guys show up day of and just magically know how to do everything. And no, we kind of appreciate a little heads up on things.
Yeah. So if you're starting a Dave Matthews cover band or similar, remember to invite the guy who's going to be doing your sound. I guarantee you won't need more in the monitors if they're there when you practice. Because they'll know just how much you need in the monitors, because they know how loud you play.
I want somebody to do a Dave Matthews career cover and like drop out of a Dave Matthews cover band and then try acting for a couple of years. Like that's the guy I want to meet.
He's in an Adam Sandler movie, right? Like there's going to be a congruence between this conversation on the Say Report and the Adam Sandler cinematic universe.
He shows up as a Baxter at some point, right? Like he shows up as a dead boyfriend, not a dead boyfriend, but like a dead fish boyfriend at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's in something. I know that. I think he might
50
be
First Dates, is it?
It might be that. I also feel like he's one of like a mailman in Chuck and Larry. Like he has some absurd like bit part in that film.
Here's how much I don't care about Dave Matthews. Many a time on this show, we will stop the presses for me to jump to IMDb, and I just don't care.
No, it's fine. We have so many other things. We could
answer all of these questions.
I don't want to. Like, I feel bad for bringing up Dave Matthews Band and like tainting this episode, but then also I tried to cover a Prince song that like belongs to Sinead O'Connor and All of Our Minds and Hearts. And that was also bad. So, like, let's just forget the last 6 minutes and go forward. Because, Sejan, I'm angry. I'm real angry this week. I got my haunches up.
Because, like, there's been so much good Prince vibes lately for a dude that is no longer with us. But go ahead. Well,
that's good. You can share some of these good Prince vibes with me. Maybe calm me down. Because I got my haunches up. And the initial thing that got my haunches up is, are you familiar with the Whatchamacallit bar?
Yeah, man. A Whatchamacallit.
Yeah.
I love me a Whatchamacallit. Like, I love me a Whatchamacallit about once a year.
A Whatchamacallit is definitely not an everyday candy bar, but you're on a road trip or you have to stop off at like a 7-Eleven for gas, and for some reason you have to go inside no matter what, whether you're paying with cash or a credit card at this specific 7-Eleven. And out of the corner of your eye, you see the Whatchamacallit, and you purchase it, and you enjoy it, but then you're like, but that's enough. I don't need more of you.
I'm not a fan of the teeth puller type candies.
Yeah. I mean, which is crazy, considering it's just crispy rice and caramel, but the caramel is so thick. Also, it's not real chocolate. It's chocolate candy.
Oh, right. The legal name for things that are like, it's not chocolate, but it's flavored enough like chocolate.
Yeah, it doesn't have enough cocoa in it to legally be called chocolate.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. So, did you know candies, that there is a brother to the Whatchamacallit bar that is chocolatey rice and peanut butter?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of want to meet this bastard stepchild. Like, where is he?
Well, that's
the redheaded brother of the Whatchamacallit.
It's a pretty good thing that you want to meet him, because they're back out in the wild. For a time, they were out there. They were called Thingamajigs.
Oh, that's such a good brotherly name to the Whatchamacallit. So far, I don't know why you're angry. There's a pleasant story.
There's a pleasant story, and I'm building up to why I'm angry. And I was a bigger fan of the Thingamajig because it's basically a crispy rice Reese's. It's delicious. It doesn't have the teeth-pulling issues of the Whatchamacallit bar, and it's something that you could maybe have 2 Thingamajigs before you get tired of them. Not like the Whatchamacallit where, like, my quota is full. So, Thingamajigs, they've been gone for a long time. Like, as of 2012, the only place you could get them was at Hershey Park in Pennsylvania. But even then, I feel like they've discontinued them. So I was at a drugstore, and I saw the Whozeewhatzit bar. And on the Whozeewhatzit bar, it's prominent that it was named by Jill M. And I really hope that it's Jill M. I don't have the wrapper anymore. I threw it away. But I'm fairly certain it says named by Jill M. And it's the Whozeewhatzit bar. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try one of these because it reminds me of the Whatchamacallit. I take a bite, and I'll be damned if that's not just a Thingamajig in a Whozeewhatzit name. And that upset me.
But if I'm in the mood for a Thingamajig, I'm gonna go out and get a Thingamajig. I'm not gonna get a Whozeewhatzit.
Exactly. I don't like that you took your candy bar with an already absurd name and then gave it another name because Jill M decided this is what it should be called. Like, it really upset me when I'm like, oh, this is good, but it's a Thingamajig. Why are you calling it a Whozeewhatzit?
This is thoroughly upsetting. Somebody, not least of which on a literary level, like I actually dove for a hot second into the world of Seuss for the past week, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. But as somebody that only freshly came up from the waters of the Seussiverse, I'm a little pissed off here that they dared to mess with the language.
Also, it's Lisa M. who named it the Whozeewhatzit.
Nice.
Not Jill M. I'm sure you're a lovely person. I'm sorry for casting any
Jill.
aspersions on you. But Lisa M., no, you call it a thingamajig because that's what it is. I mean, it's a candy bar that most people didn't know about. Did it really need a rebranding? But that's not really why my haunches are up. My haunches are up because something else that I had come to love and enjoy also went through a bit of a rebranding. And that was CBS All Access breaking free of its cocoon and emerging as the broken-winged butterfly that is Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus? I've heard about a different name this week, and I believe it was called the Frasier Channel.
Well, that's very fair, because they're going to be doing a new Frasier show, and the only person who signed on for it so far is Kelsey Grammer.
Well, it'd be a little weird if they also got John Mahoney at this point.
I mean, at this point, I think he's the only one who might be up for it. But it's just...
Did you read Kelsey Grammer's press release about them bringing back Frasier?
No.
He basically was just like, I'm so happy that Paramount has decided to do this. I have been very busy, but I'm willing to throw Paramount a bone. Was essentially his entire attitude in the release for it.
Do you know how often I have to record an episode of The Simpsons as Sideshow Bob? But I'll give you 13 episodes of Frasier again. It's just so weird to me that the press release that I saw, which did not have anything from Kelsey Grammer, it was just the initial one, to drive people to Paramount Plus, when the dearth of advertisements during the Super Bowl wasn't enough. We're also going to have more Frasier. You like Frasier, right? I guess.
It's a bad lesson. It's a bad lesson from Peacock. That's what it is. They saw Peacock in the way that they pushed The Office, and this is them leaning into that, and they're in the danger zone right now, because if they go too far, the thing is the fans and the lovers out there, you and I included, of the idea of Frasier are not the same as the lovers of The Office. So, we're not out there clamoring. That's the word. We're not out there, dying for it. We're not going to go to Paramount Plus just because. But if they're able to do something, I don't know, quirky and cynical yet classy, in every episode of Frasier, we could be there. They got to get on the ball with this Frasier advertising, because I feel like right now it reeks of desperation in the same way that we talked about with The Office and Peacock, that works for Peacock and The Office and doesn't necessarily work for Frasier and Paramount.
I mean, CBS has had the worst luck with bringing back shows. Need I remind anyone who listens to this show, Murphy Brown, which is a series I think Sejan and I enjoyed, and nobody else in the world.
I stand by that.
It was excellent.
Here's the thing. I stand by them bringing it back, and I stand by the fact that they canceled it. I think it was the perfect amount of returning to Murphy Brown that we needed. I think the problem is that they're not just showing it every weekend. They should just put that fucker on any chance they get.
I'm also mad at CBS because they canceled Tommy, and that is just so in my mind right now, because this is when Tommy premiered last year. And I would love to have a second season of Tommy, especially with everything that happened in this country and the way that show was already trying to address the issues with the police department and how they treat minorities and everything. And imagine if now they get to do ripped from the headline stuff instead of having to make up, frankly, ridiculous things for Tommy to have to deal with.
Yeah, man. Sorry. Let's get to you being angry. No.
Well, I mean, I am happy about Frasier. I have to be honest with that. But what I'm upset about is CBS All Access was designed with CBS in mind. CBS All Access was, we don't want to play ball with Netflix or Hulu, but we do want to offer people a streaming service to watch our shows. And
which we should point out is very CBS mentality. They've never cared about newer audiences, right? Like if you hold them up against guys like NBC and Fox and ABC, like they also refuse to ever go to Hulu. They refuse to like they have always kind of been this like we'll survive on our own, and they kind of have. Like it's worked for them. So like I don't blame them for having that kind of attitude with CBS All Access of just like we're not going to work with anybody else, but we'll do a thing to make you happy and you'll come to us. And it was working.
Yeah, and also the thing that they did that was just brilliant, and I don't see Peacock ever doing this because Peacock is meant to be an add-on to regular NBC. It is not meant to be like NBC but streaming. I mean,
it augments it.
Yeah, it's an augmentation.
It doesn't replace it. It augments it. Yeah.
CBS All Access had its original shows. It had The Good Fight. It had Star Trek Discovery. It had Women Who Kill, I believe, was also on there. Mm-hmm. And when it came time and they like didn't have a show, they would put up those shows and they'd be heavily edited. And sometimes during the edit, they would just put up a black screen saying, this has been edited for broadcast. If you want to see what's happening, please consider subscribing to CBS All Access. And
which sounds, it sounds fucking weird, but it makes me think of television in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where like sometimes things would happen and they would cut to screen just being like, this image is too disturbing, like send your children out of the room, like, right?
Yeah, like it's cynical. It's cynical to think that they did it, but also it worked. The reason why I got CBS All Access is that I watched The Good Fight and like I wanted to see what I was missing, and I also didn't want to have to wait for the next episode. Like for $10 I could have access to the entire season that was already released. And I think it was 2. They had waited till they had 2 seasons released before they did that. So I'm like, I can have 2 full seasons of this show and see what CBS All Access is about. So it sold me. It was a good marketing strategy. And it proves just how much CBS was like, we're doing it our way.
Yeah.
Because Frank Sinatra is still on the board. He's the chairman of the board, really.
Yeah.
Ha-cha-cha.
Apparently with Les Moonves. But yeah, like that idea that CBS has always kind of done their own thing and they've survived. Like they've constantly been like they've taken nights. You know, you throw a couple of episodes of like fucking NCIS up there, and then like that becomes must see TV. And like they have always really succeeded by kind of just doing their own thing, and it's something that has irked me in the past because I've wanted to watch shows on CBS, but as somebody that doesn't watch television anymore, I didn't have a place to go. And then they corrected that with All Access, right? And there's something that was really kind of precious about that. As much shit as I probably have given them in the past in like social circles, I will admit that like I've always kind of loved the idea that there was still this like this old people channel that was just kind of just surviving, you know?
That's funny because they have Survivor. What it really is that CBS adopted and is like comfortable living in the old way of television. It's not like every other network where if you're not kicking ass in the first 2 episodes, you're canceled. I was reminded recently of the Paul Reiser show. Did you know that Paul Reiser had a show?
Yeah. Not mad about you. The Paul Reiser show. Yeah, yes. Yeah, man.
The Paul Reiser show, which aired 2 episodes on NBC and was promptly canceled. I was reminded because of the character named Fernando in the show, and like 8-year-old on a bike saying, "I don't need to listen to you. You were named after an ABBA song."
Just about to start singing ABBA. I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. And then my father was watching Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, and Fernando's in there, and I'm like, remember the Paul Reiser show? And dead eyes. Nobody remembers the Paul Reiser show. But
it's something that only happened to us, Devin.
There needs to be a thing for that. A Mandela effect, but like localized. But yes, it's really the riser effect. If I have to be honest about it, there's some say vocabulary for you.
Yeah, that's when you start getting into like some fucking creepy pasta and Pirate Cove and all that shit. That we're not gonna. That starts to scare me, honestly.
I get that. I understand that. I really hate, this is so unrelated, but I've been dealing with this for a while. I hate when I read a synopsis of something, and because I have like such an active imagination, a synopsis for like an episode of like kids television or like a cartoon, and then my mind makes it far more sinister than it probably would be if I were to ever watch it. But then, like, I have these hang-ups about, like, no, I can't watch it. Like, that's going to be weird and creepy. And, like, I don't like that they're exploiting humans in a cartoon the way that they are. It's an episode of Total Drama Island, specifically Season 4, Episode 8. I read the synopsis of it, and it just made me feel gross. And
I'll be honest, dude. The uncut episodes of Total Drama Island can get pretty fucking gross.
Yeah, like I that's the other thing is that I've seen the show. I have enough knowledge of the show to know that like my idea of what this synopsis represents could be spot on. Like it's one of those things, and it's available on Netflix. And I'm like, you should just watch it. You should just watch it, and then you can't be afraid of it anymore because you've just watched it. But I can't bring myself to do it.
It's not real.
But what if it were? No, they're cartoons, and I understand that cartoons aren't real. But back to Paramount Plus, and why I'm so mad about Paramount Plus is that in morphing from CBS All Access to Paramount Plus, they lost that beautiful thing that was CBS about everything. They're no longer their unique playing by the rules of old school TV where like, yeah, we'll do 12 seasons of The Big Bang Theory even though nobody's watching really.
I mean, it's the secret with HBO Max is that, yeah, they became Warner Brothers and they have all of this other stuff that's like Warner Brothers centric and cartoons and all this stuff that is not on HBO. But at the end of the day, it still focuses so heavily on HBO that you feel like you're getting away with something. Like as somebody that my entire life, we never had HBO growing up. And like, sob story, like part of it is because we couldn't afford it at some points, but part of it was also because like we didn't feel the need for it at other points, right? Like, I mean, like it was never something that we craved so much that we couldn't find in other ways. HBO has always made it a point to be just available enough to kind of keep you happy and get your money, but also, you know, if you wanted more, you could pay for more. And that's the feeling with HBO Max is like, you don't need HBO Max, but you know, if you don't have it, you don't have A, B, or C, and it's just like, oh shit, I need HBO Max. And I will be talking about more of that later because I've got some fun shit to talk about with that. I'm excited about. But the idea that like the focus is clearly HBO, right? To the point where like you have to kind of watch like HBO's schedules and you have to know how long they're going to have a movie and things like that. Like so as much as that app is not an HBO app, it's a Warner Brothers app. They don't call it the Warner Brothers app. They call it the HBO Max app. And like it's perfect. And the fact that Paramount Plus has decided to not just be CBS total access is disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. But what really bums me out is when it was just CBS, and it was never just CBS. It's just that CBS was front-loaded, and then you could still go to Comedy Central and Nickelodeon and BET and all the other Viacom-owned networks. Mm-hmm. But when it was front-loaded CBS, there was a little tab on the front page of new episodes. And it would be the stuff that aired the night before, and it would go back for 2 weeks. So you could go through and be like, oh, last Wednesday there was an episode. I'll go back to last Wednesday. Look, I'm watching the newest episode of SWAT, even though I was too busy to watch it when it was new.
Yeah.
Now that it's Paramount Plus, that has been completely removed. And you specifically, Sejim, have complained a lot about the UI on streaming services. And I finally get it with Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Because it's terrible. The continue watching, like, you know, Hulu, you watched the last episode of Mr. Mayor. When there's a new episode of Mr. Mayor, we're going to put that right in front of you so that you know that there's a new episode of Mr. Mayor, you should watch it. When you log into Paramount Plus, it's not like that. It just shows you everything. Yeah. And it's not focused to you in any way, shape, or form. And it's really disappointing because it used to be. You had it, but you got rid of that feature that made this such a joy to use in the pursuit of Disney. Like, it really just feels like they're chasing Disney, especially with the name, right?
Specifically Disney Plus, right? Like not just Disney, but the idea that the Paramount, what is it called?
Paramount Plus?
So the idea that Paramount Plus is trying so hard to just emulate Disney Plus specifically is hugely on display. And I will put a mea culpa out there for a slight one, a small one for right now. Part of the issue, and I've said this before, part of the issue is that I'm not the only person that uses my apps, right? And I don't utilize the users setting as much as I should on certain ones, although some apps just don't allow for that. But so part of my issue has always been exactly this: the idea that it doesn't feel like it's mine. Right? Like Netflix does a very good job of making me feel like it's my Netflix. And when I talk to people, I will say, oh, I got this recommendation for this. Like the conversations and jokes that we've had about the fact that like my Umbrella Academy card has like 5 on it, like doing its time warpy thing. Meanwhile, like my roommate and her wife both have Ellen Page making out with her girlfriend on it, right? Like, I wonder why that is geared as the ways that it is, right? And so like, the way that Netflix gets to know its user and push itself on its user is creepy, but comforting, right? And that says a million things that I don't want to get into at the moment. But the idea that like whenever I go into Netflix, it's looking at me. I'm looking at it and it's looking at me is hugely influential and important, and like it's what can make or break a series, right? If they can figure out how to pitch a movie to just enough people, it suddenly becomes the next big thing on Netflix. Otherwise it falls on its face, right? And so the fact that Netflix is so good at that is not fair to anybody else. But then you look at something like a Disney Plus, you look at something like a Paramount Plus, where it's just so cold. The second you go into the app, everybody's looking at the same thing. It's always pushing the same ideas on you. It's always asking you to pay more money for add-ons for A, B, or C, right? Even HBO Max to this point kind of hasn't quite gotten down the whole, like, this is your HBO yet. Now, the benefit that HBO has is that there's a lot on the HBO Max app that I'm into. So the fact that it's not quite geared towards me is okay, because I still always find something, but it's not nearly as good as Netflix. And that's always been my biggest issue with something like Amazon's was the worst offender. Hulu was second in line, and then Netflix was like the gold standard for me. Now there's much more to talk about here. And I'm glad that you're finally kind of getting what I'm getting at, is the idea that it doesn't know that Devin's watching. It just knows you are watching. It knows people are watching.
I don't know. Hulu has always known who's watching. We did a really good job making sure that everyone had an account.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I really do like that, because when we log in on my father's account, because that's what we mostly watch TV on as a family, it really does push the shows that we've been watching, or shows that are similar to the shows that we've been watching if we're all caught up. But when I log in, like, it's great, because sometimes I'll log in and they'll be like, hey, you want to watch Seinfeld? Right? You haven't watched Seinfeld in like a month. Or it'll be like, hey, there was a new episode of Family Guy. I know you have never watched Family Guy, but you've watched every episode of American Dad 4 times. Do you maybe want to watch this new episode of Family Guy instead of American Dad? And American Dad is right next to Family Guy. So I can still choose if I'm going there for American Dad, but Hulu has become much more targeted. They've learned it. And the issue that I think that we're going to see with all of these streaming services is how they're going to evolve. And what needs to happen is they need to give themselves that time to evolve. Because if it's not working and they just pull the plug, like with something like CISO, right? So we already have an example of NBC releasing an augmentation to their normal offering and then being like, fuck this, it's not working.
which was ridiculous because it was working. I can't tell you how many people were like so excited about CISO. They didn't give it a chance. That is the biggest sin, is that CISO did not have enough time to become a thing.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I want to make sure that, like, people aren't just getting this for The Office. Nobody's watching The Office. We need to kill Peacock. That would be a mistake. You know what else is a mistake? Like, just straight up, why isn't all of the CISO stuff on Peacock? I've never really considered that, but as you're like, people who loved CISO, I remember there being legitimate, like, new material that I'm like, I might check out CISO for this. And then I heard that it was going away, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to bother now.
Oh, what was the one about the dude who was the therapist in his garage, and it was so good, and now I'm Shrink. It was such a good show, and it got 2 seasons on CISO, and then I think it got 1 season on Hulu or something like that. Like, maybe that's why it's not up there. But like, yeah, like why can't I go and watch Shrink? This thing that was legitimately like this beloved cult thing that came out of this app that they created. That like it's stupid that kind of thing is not existent on Peacock for sure.
It's stupid to me, right? So Sunnyside was a show that aired 4 episodes, and then NBC said, we're not broadcasting this anymore, but we're going to release the episodes new every Friday on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool. Like, that was a cool thing that they did. And Sunnyside was a legitimately great show, making a lot of commentary about the situation for immigrants in America under Donald Trump as the president. And it was legitimately an enjoyable product. And the fact that Sunnyside isn't on Peacock is strange to me. Like, why? Why isn't it there? Why isn't Perfect Harmony there? Why isn't Outsourced? Why is Outsourced just blanked from existence?
Yeah.
Like, you have these shows that were cult classics that, by all accounts, you should be like the easiest party to access the rights to, and you don't put those things that could legitimately draw an audience to your platform.
I mean, that's what was Netflix's bread and butter for a while when they first got started. Was they were the place where you could go find that weird thing that you couldn't see anymore, right? Like, and that was kind of a big draw for them. And then Hulu even kind of learned that lesson in that they would kind of go out and find some bizarre stuff that like maybe 1 or 2 people like in your social circle had heard about or watched illegally through like YouTube or fucking Vimeo or whatever. And so they just scored the whole like show. And so then you'd go to Hulu to watch it. I mean, like, it is how streaming kind of started, was with this idea of, hey, you know that show that like you've watched a grainy version of on YouTube? We've got the whole series and it's in pretty good quality. Like, that is how streaming that was how streaming kind of just like won our hearts. And it feels like these new versions, these new streaming services didn't learn those lessons. And I will leave Disney out of that conversation, because I think that Disney did learn that lesson, which is why like every Disney Channel original movie is available to you and things like that, right? Like it's just that for Disney, their whole market is making you kind of nostalgic and bringing back the things you kind of loved 10 years ago, but for some reason now you're a diehard fan, right? Disney knows how to work that bone.
Disney's a jerk. I'm mad at Disney.
Yeah.
But not really. It's just that, you know, they say, I really hate that the Disney Afternoon stuff is not released with the pilots at the front. I understand that the pilots were not part of the syndication package, and so were then shown as like the first 3-4 episodes of their second season. But like, you're in control of the cultivation of this. Put it together. Go off of production codes or something.
If anybody could figure this out, it's Disney, right? And like, and that is the upsetting part. And that's kind of that's the underlying feeling of this whole thing, right? Is like when we talked about the idea of streaming and it being the idea that we could kind of go out and put the money where we wanted to put it, versus cable packages where we would spend this money and it would kind of go to everybody. A little bit would go to everyone, but that's okay, because 5 or 6 channels we were really investing in. Now we're able to go to specific channels. When Paramount comes out and says, give us money because you love CVS and you love Paramount and you love Nickelodeon and you love Viacom and all that stuff, right? Give us money specifically for Viacom money. We give you that, but then you don't treat it like it's any different than a cable package, and that's upsetting. I don't care that there's 1,000 different streaming services. I know that there are people out there that have that feeling, but I personally don't. Like, give me 1,000 different streaming services that allow me to then pick and choose who I get to give specifically my money to, but then in that, cater yourself to me. I am coming to you as a specific service. Treat me as a specific customer, right? Like they're missing the second half of that equation.
That's true. Because that's the Netflix difference. That's the Hulu difference. Is that weird? I feel like I have a concierge who's telling me things that I'll enjoy on these.
Exactly.
And that's enough for me. To wrap this up, because I have many other things to discuss. And this might actually be a good thing. Do you know what HBO Max is called in Australia?
HBO Mate.
That's better than what it actually is.
Oh no!
It's called Binge.
Wait, what?
Binge.
Like, isn't that like a slang word in like England and Australia for like? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, binge is just like overindulging, and we binge TV shows.
I might be confusing it with other.
Are you thinking of bung?
Weird words. Or minge?
Yeah, minge. Yeah, that's another one. I think you're thinking of that. No, it's called Binge. And the funny thing about that is, I asked Will, is it called HBO Max over there? And his response was Binge. And I thought, because we're both on iPhones, and iPhones notoriously have the worst autocorrect in the game, that he wrote bingo, but it turned the O into an E. So I just thought he was agreeing with me. That it's called HBO Max everywhere. It's not, the world isn't upside down. Right?
No, it is definitely Minge that I was thinking of. Yeah. And why the fuck would they call it Binge when it's so easy to just like mess with that? It's like the cracked or like Mad Magazine joke version of it. But yeah. Oh man.
Well, those are both gone, right? We've covered the death of Mad Magazine and Cracked Magazine. But yeah, it's called. But then like he's talking about it, and he's like, so I was watching Binge again, and then like, wait, it's actually called Binge? Like that's what HBO Max? Why? I thought you were just bingo. No, bingo would be a better name.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's nuts. But since Will has been brought up, a new show has come to the CW.
Oh.
And I have very specifically only watched one episode because I don't want to know any more about this series until we get to talk about it on the Say Report.
Okay.
And Will, he does our outros. He's the quiz master of the Say Report. He's a big
reporter, yeah.
He's a big Superman guy. We don't talk about it near enough on this show, but Will loves Superman to the fact that he has a big S tattoo on his shoulder. Guy loves Superman. And one of my earliest memories with Will is I'm in a comic shop and I find a trade paperback of The Adventures of Lois and Clark. The thing is in immaculate condition. It collects a whole bunch of Superman stories that were done specifically as tie-ins to that 5-season series with Dean Cain and Terry
Hatcher.
Yep. I was thinking Terry Garr. I'm a big Terry Garr fan, but it's Terry Hatcher. You're correct. Yeah. They're real and they're spectacular. And I promptly bought it for him. And I feel like it has to have been one of the first gifts I ever gave him was this I can't believe it exists. It's a thing that I cannot believe exists in our world. A tie-in comic to the tie-in television show for Superman.
Yeah.
So now, on the CW, they have a new series called Superman and Lois. And the instant thoughts are of the Lois and Clark show. Right. They were all very, very sexy in 90s. Like, God, even Jimmy Olsen could get it. Let's be completely honest. Even Perry White could get it.
Well, so like for anybody that is not aware of this show, which
I think
like
we should
is
probably.
hard for me to fathom, but Lois and Clark was a 1 hour romantic dramedy. That's not even. It was really more of a romantic comedy for like Superman and Lois, and they would definitely get into comic book style adventures. But it's the early '90s, so like think about like take that with the grain of salt. That it, right,
The
like it's not.
episodes that
Yeah.
I remember most of all is the episode where Superman was rescuing a guy from a cage and got struck by lightning, and that guy got like a quarter of Superman's powers and tried to become his own version of Superman. And then 2 seasons later, Superman and Lois were like flying together, and he got struck by lightning and it passed through him and into her and literally transferred all of his powers to Lois. And, like, first of all, we did not understand lightning in the 90s. We just need to fucking admit that. As a species, as a society, we thought lightning was fucking magic in the 90s. And I'm so happy that over the past 30 years, we figured out that it's not. Is it? Is lightning magic, CJ?
I mean, like, well, so lightning. So you got to remember that, like, that's the it's the ripple effect of something like a Frankenstein, right? Like the idea that lightning has electricity and electricity is somehow life, and like and so what we're talking about is things like life essence gets passed on. Lightning is like always the reason that like we see bodies get switched and powers get moved or like people being. I mean, Jason Voorhees has been brought back to life by lightning. Lightning is in the 80s and 90s,
All right,
as you said. Lightning
objection, Your Honor. Let the record reflect that Jason Voorhees was only brought back to life by lightning because a giant metal cross was impaled through his heart and then struck by lightning. It needs to be reflected because this is the most ridiculous thing. Had he just been struck by lightning and come back to life, that would have been enough for me.
No. There always needs to be a lightning rod. There always needs to there's the idea that somebody gets hit by lightning and they suddenly have like powers of some kind is not too unusual. But so like this is a fucking weird reference, but like lightning is one of those things that we don't understand to the point where if you remember the fucking the Danny Glover Joe Pesci like reunite after
Gone Fishing?
Lethal Weapon, Gone Fishing, in which the joke of that movie, one of the running jokes in that movie is that Joe Pesci keeps getting struck by lightning and it literally drives him insane when it happens, and it only happens whenever he's holding a metallic object in his hand and holds it up in the air, but a la the wrench at one point when they're fixing the car.
That's a movie that we should probably rewatch for this show.
Oh, God, it's probably awful, but I remember loving it. But I was also 7.
You were also very young when you saw it. I guess now I'm thinking about like lightning things. There's the fact that Ernest Goes to Jail when he gets the electric chair becomes a Magneto-esque god. Flying around with electric powers.
Yeah, like people get hit by lightning and it changes everything. But so that's not so that's to say that Lois and Clark did not just come up with the idea that lightning was magic. And you're not wrong that like we treated lightning as magic, but we've kind of always treated it as magic.
I just can't believe we still treated it like magic in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
because I could name every science fiction show from the 90s. I could probably point out the lightning episode.
I mean, as you pointed out, like there's Simpsons jokes, there's all sorts of weird like references to lightning being like magic for sure.
Yeah. Well, so Lois and Clark is an hour-long romantic comedy where they fall in love, and oh my God, and there's so little Superman in it. It's a weird show. It's a very weird show.
It was a weird show, and it ran for 5 years. And like I remember that like my mom fucking loved it, right? Like it was this thing where it may very well be the first true instance of DC Comics being able to just fully go mainstream, where grandma was talking about it at church with her friends, which like in the 90s was unthinkable.
Yeah, it's really nuts. It honestly is. When you put it into those, I just can't. I can't with the show because one of the other things of it, like I'm not prepared to talk about Lois and Clark, but I'm prepared to talk about the shit that I remember. One
Yeah.
of the big things is the fact that both of his parents are alive,
Yeah.
which like the driving force for him to become Superman is the death of Jonathan Kent.
hmm but we have to, so the other side of that to point out is that as much as we're talking about how silly this show is and ridiculous it was, it is also something that within the fandom is still so beloved that Dean Cain gets brought into Supergirl because of his connection to that. Like it is something that is still to this day enjoyed by Superman fans.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I don't know. I really like when I started reading Superman comics and saw just how big of like a catalyst the death of his father was to Clark becoming Superman.
Yeah.
It was very strange that like I thought it was so cool at the time that he would call his parents in Smallville and they'd both be on phones having the conversation with him. There's a very 90s thing as well. Is that like mom's on the corded phone in the kitchen and dad's on a cordless phone.
Yeah, sitting in his study for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Like that, and also the fact that like you're Superman, you could just fly there and visit with your family. Why are you paying for long distance?
Yeah, right.
We used to have to pay for long distance. The world is crazy. But yeah, so Lois and Clark is this thing that is beloved. Even beloved by like my mother. So when Superman and Lois comes along, like my father and sister, my father and his daughter, my father and sister, they love Supergirl. That was their show that they shared. They would watch it all the time. I didn't really care about it, and neither did my mother. And I think that's also important, like, as a slight detour, to have those shows that you share with only certain members of your family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. Like there's something special about a movie or a show that like my mom and I watched that like my dad and my brother just weren't interested in. And yeah, for sure.
So that's an important thing. But with Superman and Lois, my mother was interested to watch it as well. So we all sat down to watch the pilot of Superman and Lois. And let me tell you, Sejin, is motherfucking banana pants.
Oh no.
So I guess the biggest thing, the first thing I need to deal with is that Lois and Clark have children.
Yeah, two sons, right? Jonathan
John and Jordan.
Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny and Jordy. Yeah, okay. Yep.
And so that's weird because in my mind, Superman would blow a load like a shotgun straight through Lois Lane.
Yeah, I kind of applaud it for the audacity of just basically like spitting in the face of every 90s Superman fan that had that exact conversation. Like as much as this is one of those moments where I'm gonna come to the defense of some of the like horrendous shit that Kevin Smith would do in his movies as far as like the conversations that were had. In that he captures a conversation that I know that I listened to like people have around me in high school. Like that conversation of could Superman have a baby? I have straight up heard like academic papers on it at this point in my life.
I mean, my big issue is the fact that, you know, would the DNA match? Like he's an alien
technically
species.
an alien, yeah.
Like I know that we look like Kryptonians. However, we cannot jump and fly and heat laser out of our eyes. So there's something different on a genetic level. And I don't know if those two things would mesh.
I mean, it's not my biggest issue with the series, but we will get there in a second, I
Oh,
think.
I
But
can't wait to. I'd love. Have you seen the show? Have you watched it?
I've only seen the first episode,
Oh,
and
so
it
have I.
was the
Perfect.
extended. Okay, yeah,
All right.
it legit. So yes, so there's so it starts out with the idea that Superman and Lois have children, and like older kids. I think that was one of the things that really threw me for a loop. Is I kind of thought they were gonna be like a la WandaVision, like Tommy and Billy, like they were gonna be growing up, but they're pretty much like young men at the point that
They're
this series
freshmen in
starts
high
out.
school too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the other thing. They look like they're both 18, but
Hmm.
they're the youngest they could be is 14 years old.
I mean, they're CW tweens, so
Yeah.
which means that they're 20 years old and are gonna fuck. Like that's so like that's what the CW does. Like I'm not gonna sit here and admonish it or defend it, but that's the
Listen
CW
to our
method.
Riverdale very special episode, and you'll get it. That like
Hmm.
if you're a tween on the CW, you gonna get it. You're
Yeah.
gonna be like Perry White in the Adventures of Lois and Clark.
Yeah, so they have two freshmen in high school. One of them, I forgive me because I watched it such a long time ago, but one of them is having mental issues is not the right way to put it, but
One
is
of them
struggling.
has been diagnosed with a social anxiety disorder.
Yeah, like
That is all they tell us. They don't
Right.
tell us like the extent of it. It's just this past year, Jordan was diagnosed with a social anxiety disorder.
Right, and the big issue with Jordan is the idea that his father, or at least as we see, that one of the big issues that Jordan is dealing with is that his dad is never around. Because big reveal, Jordan and Jonathan don't know Daddy is Superman.
Which is so fucking stupid. Is that your big issue?
No,
Oh,
not
okay.
my big issue.
That's one of
We'll
my
get
big
there.
issues with it.
I
Because
also, yep, I have to admit I don't love that either, but like that's not the thing that really gets me.
I just feel like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like I get, we're going to raise our children to believe in Santa Claus. Like
Mhm.
that adds whimsy and magic into your life, right? But like not telling your kids that they're half alien,
Yeah.
that could backfire in 100 different ways.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even think about it that way. I just thought about the idea of like not admitting to them that you're a superhero is kind of squishy, and it's a problem seen many times in comics. And in fact, it's one of the reasons that I love stories like The Incredibles so much, right? Where they don't hide who they are to their kids, just like they don't expect their kids to hide who they are, and it becomes like that's part of the conversation. To not tell your kids means you're removing it from the conversation, and I don't like that. But yeah, I didn't even think about the idea that like no, also they're not going to understand their physiology because they're fucking teenage boys, freshmen in high school, and they don't even understand what their bodies are doing anyway. Never mind the fact that like half of the shit is that they're going to get power from the yellow sun. Oh man.
Yeah, like it just seems like it's not like I'm a superhero and I didn't tell my kids that I'm a superhero because it could put them into danger. Like if Spider-Man made that argument, Spider-Man not really because he's got the radioactive blood and that could affect his offspring. I guess Iron Man's very open about who he is. I can't think of Batman, right? Let's pretend Batman has
or
a
Iron Man.
regular life.
And but that's just it, right? Is if you're looking at somebody like Batman or Iron Man, they don't have any physiological changes to their body.
Right.
It's just that they push their bodies to an extent that most humans can't, right? And the idea that if they had kids and didn't tell them what the deal was, their kids would still be quote unquote normal kids, right?
Yes. Like it wouldn't, and I don't think that it could like suddenly blow up in your face. And I could almost understand the argument for not telling your kids because of all the arguments that they bring up in Superman and Lois, where it's like, well, they're young, they might share the secret, and it's like, well, you know what? If you normalize that this is just a thing in our lives and we don't tell anybody, the only four people who know are your mother, myself, and you two, and no one else can learn, like, that's normalized. Finding out when you're like 15 years old, there's a better chance that the secret's gonna come out because it's new information and all of those things about your body is changing and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the kind of shit that leads to like fucking like dead bullies and sexual assault. Like in the real world, this would be horrifying. This would this yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah. I don't get keeping it a secret from them, especially if there's a chance. Like, there's a brush off line of, well, the computer at the Fortress of Solitude said that it wasn't very likely that they would have powers. Oh, cool.
So my biggest thing, only because we're now talking about the idea of Superman as father, right? And that is what this whole show is about, is my biggest issue with this particular story is the death of Martha.
That's fair.
Because we already have the death of Jonathan, right? And that being a huge impactful thing on him. And we talked earlier with Superman and Lois, how with Lois and Clark, how him not being dead is kind of weird, but at least him being alive allows him to be there kind of in an interesting way that like Superman didn't have growing up, right? Like that idea that like he can consult him on things and for that become a better man. So all it can really do is make Superman a better Superman. Losing Martha is maybe, pardon me, part of this is all of the stupid fucking research I've been doing with Snyder recently. But like the loss of Martha would break and ruin him. And then on top of that, to be raising kids and to not have that voice that he can go to is
it's horrific. It's honestly horrific.
Well, and it's unfair. It's not fun. It like there's no good side to him struggling with the loss of his mother at the same time that he is struggling to be a good father. It turns Superman and Clark, into a broody, rotten character that like he's not supposed to be. So they've committed the big sin with Superman that everybody called out Snyder for, in that you've taken it and you've taken Superman, you've taken Clark, and you've made him into Batman / Bruce. He's no longer the fun and like leader and like the knowledgeable and the level-headed one, which is fun for a movie. And so like that's where it kind of works for me in something like at the end of Man of Steel or throughout Batman v Superman or things like that. Like I'm okay with Superman losing his cool for a moment, but the idea is that he's supposed to then come back to that. And when you're talking about it being a show where that's just going to be his arc, it gets to be to that point where it's cringy and unwatchable for me. It's no longer a Superman story. It's some other hero that happens to, you know what I mean? Like they're telling the story of somebody that's not Superman at this point.
Agreed. Because in all the comics that I can think of, losing Martha is what sends him down the path of like enslaving the world.
Yeah,
and
right.
becoming like a despotic leader and a fascist. He's a huge fascist because the death of his mother is the death of his ties to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It also puts an undue strain on Lois Lane to be his connection to humanity.
And specifically, and maybe this isn't fair, but this is exactly the way I feel. It is his connection to the feminine side of humanity, which he loses. That is a huge thing. You know what I mean? Because this isn't a show where he doesn't also have Diana. He doesn't also have Zatanna. Like he doesn't. There's no other female figure for him to truly lean on. They don't even really focus on. I'm trying to remember now. Is this in the same Earth as Supergirl, or is this supposed to be a different Earth?
This is a different Earth because every time that Superman, I don't know. Actually, it might be the same Earth as Supergirl.
They don't at least in the first episode, they don't bring that up. So like he also doesn't have his cousin. He has no female shoulder to lean on in a way that allows Clark to understand. He doesn't understand humanity writ large, which is always an interesting thing about Superman, is him trying to struggle with the fact to understand the world despite, right? And so not having a mom, not having a dad or a mom, you're saying, like it completely removes him from any semblance of like caring about the human race in a way. And like we're supposed to feel like he cares about us because of Lois and his sons, but as we've seen, like the strain he puts on his sons literally puts one in therapy, and the other one is so disconnected from reality that like I'm pretty sure he's going to end up being a villain at some point on this show.
Which that's crazy. That was a nice turn because they didn't set it up that way, but it also leads to another thing that I kind of had an issue with. but we'll get there. But you're not wrong. I also kind of have an issue with the fact that Mortal Kombat versus DC is apparently a game in the universe.
Yeah.
Like, that was great watching Jordan play as Raiden and kick Superman's ass. Like, I don't like Superman because he's my dad, but I don't know that. Like, that's some weird symbolism you guys are trying to convey that's not true. Like,
he just inherently hates his father, even though he doesn't recognize his father.
Like,
that's dark. That's deep.
It's just like, it would be one thing if he did that because I have a strained relationship with my father because he's never around and I know that he's Superman. Yeah. Like, at that point, yeah, no, I get it. I get why you would be beating up your dad who you feel has abandoned you, especially on the day where you were supposed to, like, have a group therapy session with him, but he was too busy saving a nuclear reactor in just the worst CGI that I have ever seen. And I've lived through some bad CGI season.
Yeah, and I mean, like this is the same network that brought us season 1 of Supergirl. Well, I guess that was CBS.
Yeah.
But in that, Martian Manhunter and like Greg Berlanti in this group, right? Like, and that was kind of upsetting, some of the stuff with Martian Manhunter in season 1, especially then we get into season 2 and you start seeing stuff with what's her name? Not John, but Megan and like Mars and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't great is what I'm getting at. Like, it's never been stellar, but man, yeah.
Watching Superman lift an iceberg out of the ocean, that was bad. This is your Superman show. This is where you put the money. This is your pilot. This is where you put the money. Like, you can't show me that, like, this is the one that's supposed to convince me to watch the show. You need to spend, I don't care if the next 3 episodes he never flies.
Yeah, right? Yeah. He just walks everywhere. They did that in the comics and they didn't even have to spend money.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's trying to acclimate to Smallville and we can't have Superman flying out of Smallville all the time.
Right.
Because that's the other thing. So Martha dies, so they move back to Smallville because, you know, I think this is where the kids should be raised. This is before they know that the kids have any sort of powers.
Yeah.
And then there's first of all, Lana Lang shows up looking so much like Hermione Lodge from Riverdale.
Yeah, but also at the same time not being Lana Lang, at least not as I know her.
No, not at all. Like, she's Veronica, she's Hermione Lodge from Riverdale. Yeah. Like, yeah. I'm just like, you're not the same character that you have always been, Lana Lang. Like, you hold no candle to Lois, but also, like, he's married and has 15-year-old kids with her, so you shouldn't. But, like, to make you Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, that's a choice.
The bigger thing is that Lana should be this powerful figure. The reason that Clark and Superman are both drawn to Lana in a way that kind of quite makes him question his relationship with Lois is because she is strong and powerful and edgy. I mean, she's his Catwoman. Like, for all intents and purposes, she is the Selena Kyle to Superman, and she doesn't present that way at all in this.
It's very strange, but so she's there at his mother's funeral, and she brings her daughter Sarah, who apparently Jordan, the one with the social anxiety disorder, shared a magical summer with. And so he's all happy to see her, and they go out to the barn, even though they were told, don't go to the barn.
Don't go to the barn.
Everything in there can kill you. Like, you gotta, like, there's some real good parenting on display. There's not. That's terrible, right? Mm-hmm. Don't go there. Everything will kill you. Well, I want to go there.
Yeah. At least put a fucking lock on the door anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, and also, that's where the router is for the Wi-Fi? So what, you just don't have Wi-Fi in the house? You have it in the barn?
Clark knows that really the Wi-Fi signal is just trying to get into their brain with, like, all the 5G networks around and all that. So he has it out there, and he also... he has a metal cage over it to stop it. He can't figure out why he can't connect to the internet, but at least he knows he's safe from his internet.
Jesus. there's a world, there's an Elseworlds tale I'd like to see.
QAnon man.
Proud Boy Kent.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, I think that's called The Boys, right? If I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so they go out to the barn to fix the Wi-Fi, and there's a terrible accident, and it looks like Jonathan and Jordan are going to be crushed by falling pipes, and miraculously they're okay. And Lois and Clark believe that it's Jonathan who has the powers because we are literally shown him throwing a football as like a 6-year-old, and rather than going through the tire he's aiming at, it hits the rope and breaks the rope.
Which doesn't make sense. That's not how physics work, but yeah.
Right, but like, so they're kind of like hinting at the fact that Jonathan has powers because, like, that's the Superman move, right? Breaking a rope by hitting it with a football, that's something Superman would do.
Yeah.
So then when they're safe, they assume, oh, so Jonathan has powers. Fucking Fortress of Solitude computer was wrong. What now? So the kids are fine, and then they leave them alone on the farm, Lois and Clark, to go look into the reverse mortgages Martha took out on the farm to apparently be the stimulus for the entire town of Smallville. And of course, the first place you're going to go after you almost die there is the barn and figure out why you didn't die.
Right.
And they find Clark's spaceship from when he was a baby coming here from Krypton. And I don't know. Like, it's just so absurd.
My big question is, why? I guess I have to kind of struggle with this because, like, why is it such a huge plot point that they have to save the farm? Martha has passed on. Like, Jonathan hasn't been around for a while. Why is it so important to them to keep the entire farm? Because they're also not farmers. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like, it's not their life, it's not their blood. If he's really concerned about maintaining like some memory of his childhood, like, fight to keep the 1 acre that the house and the barn are on, but like it's become such a huge deal to him to save the farm. And it feels like such a stupid trope.
It's dumb. It's so dumb. It makes no sense, right? I didn't even consider this, but it doesn't make any sense that this is what the show is about, is like, we have to save the farm. But also, like, I think my mom wanted us to come live here. Yeah. Like, what? Where did you get that from? She just wants you to be present with your sons. She just
wanted you to be a better dad. And in fact, being here is kind of making you a worse one.
Oh my God. Also, like I talked about, you could go to Smallville and visit with your parents, your Superman fast. Like, it bothers me that he doesn't get to say goodbye to his mom, but also that, like, he hadn't seen her in years. Like, I don't know. Sejin, you do not live in Rhode Island with the rest of your family. If you had the ability to travel faster than a speeding bullet via flight and be in Rhode Island in like an hour, would you stop by maybe once a week?
I feel like Sunday dinner would be a thing with my family. Yes. Like, I mean, like, I know, like, that's like a running joke on Modern Family that they always get together on Sundays to be together, but as somebody that is not able to do that, you better fucking believe I'd be there every day.
It's Life in Pieces, where they get together every Sunday for brunch. Modern Family never really had a day. They just always saw each other.
It's every Sunday they get together for dinner. That is not even.
I need to watch this.
This is not me pulling out a. This is not me trying to be a dick, but that is literally like the joke in every episode, is that it always ends with them all going to dinner together on Sunday.
I do not remember that, and I've watched a lot of Modern Family, but I came in the 5th season, so maybe I missed the particular descriptor of that. But yeah, like. And you know why you're able to go visit your mom every week with your super speed? If your kids are aware that you are Superman.
Yeah.
Like, keeping it a secret from them means that, like, you tie your hands. I also absolutely hate that Superman is so, like, I can't be a normal person. I'm a superhero. Like, no, you get to have a life, Superman. Otherwise, why did you get married and have children? Like, those are other things that you'd be like, no, no, no. I have to be a superhero. No
Yeah, it's
time for
taken you a
love,
long
Dr.
time. Yeah,
Jones.
it's taken a long time for you to come to this conclusion. Like you're a little too invested now, Superman. Like you don't get to make that choice now. Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying. Is it turns Superman into this like very shitty anti like Superman character that like it's hard for me because as somebody that is trying so hard to kind of invest in this idea of Superman being a viable, interesting character for like to consume. One of the biggest issues with Superman is that because he is Superman, like there's no issue that he can't just solve in a matter of moments. And like usually that's used as like a comic booky no bad guy can stop him. But it literally actually means like no, nothing in his life can get in his way. Like the idea that he can hold down a 9 to 5 job as a reporter, but then also be Superman at the same time is because he is Superman, right? The idea that he can go out and he can have dinner with Lois at 10, but then like patrol all night because he is Superman. That is literally the running thing with him. So to try and introduce domestic issues to Superman is really hard. And we see that struggle. And in all of these movies and all of these shows, they always have to make caveats. They always have to make changes. They always have to introduce some little twist to the Superman formula so that he can kind of be fun to watch. But it feels like the choice in this particular series is, oh, we're going to make him shitty. like we're just going to make him a bad person. And it's like, well, that's kind of fundamentally off the mark.
Yeah,
What if they had said that he was a great dad, a loving dad, and a wonderful dad up until Martha died, and that is like his thing, is that Martha dies and he starts to kind of like back away from his responsibilities and his family. Like that's an interesting
there's
story.
a very interesting story.
But he's already doing that before Martha died.
He never really cared about his kids. Like,
Yeah.
also, and I find it hard to believe that Lois Lane is the most famous person in journalism if she's been busy raising these 2 kids. And I don't mean to like say that women can also have it all. It's just, it doesn't make sense that she has been responsible for 2 other human lives with no help from Clark and has still also been able to maintain her status that she had.
I mean, what it is she is more of a Superman than Clark is in this, in the story.
And,
like,
and that's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be fine with the fact that he became a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
Like, why do I gotta be at the Daily Planet? I don't.
Why do I have to be Superman? Imagine him making the other choice of him trying to be the best father he possibly can be, and what that means is it's to the detriment of the world that like things are happening that he's not stopping because he's home with his kids. Like that being like there's so many ways in which you could tell stories about Superman having to choose between home life and not. And I mean like as I said, it's the same struggle that every like Superman media has had since Superman Returns, right? Like since the 2000s, like the idea of us wanting to see Superman but with a flaw has been hard. It's been a struggle for creators, and this is no different in that. And in a lot of ways, it's worse.
Yeah. So I'll just fast forward the rest of it. Jordan goes to a bonfire. He kisses Sarah, who has a boyfriend, and probably should have mentioned that before they were having a romantic time by the bonfire. He's about to get beat up, but he uses his flame vision to cause an explosion at the bonfire, which I still don't know how that happened. I don't know how shooting a fire with flame vision or heat vision causes a giant explosion. Are you a chemist or a physicist, Eugene? Can you explain that to me?
I am neither, but I can tell you this: it doesn't.
It would just make it hotter.
Yeah.
Like, if I saw him shoot like a gas can, then I get it. But he just shot a fire, and it caused a giant explosion. So then the reveal, Jonathan doesn't have powers, despite the fact that we were still shown footage that leads me to believe that he probably does. Jordan does.
Yeah.
And then the show ends because That's enough. That's your to be continued. That's your first issue of the comic. Oh, we got to deal with the fact that Jordan has powers. Also, Lex Luthor is Iron Man in this world.
By the way, forgot to mention that part.
It's so non-essential to like the actual important stuff of this story. Like, I don't know. I haven't watched another episode, and like I keep telling myself it's because I wanted to only have this one episode to like focus on because of just how crazy it was. But I'll give it a 4-episode test, but some really incredible stuff's going to have to happen for me to stay invested.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I almost feel like you kind of got to treat it like Riverdale, right? Like the idea that like if you're going and expecting to watch Archie and his friends be wholesome, you're not going to get that. But if you shut your brain off and you just accept that this is the world that the show lives in, you can really enjoy yourself. And it's kind of that same thing. If you don't go in wanting to watch a Superman show, this is actually a very interesting story. But don't call it Superman in Love.
You know what the issue is? That's you just distilled the issue to its perfect thing. Even though Riverdale is not wholesome, Archie Andrews is Archie Andrews. Veronica Lodge is Veronica Lodge. Mm-hmm. They're still inherently the characters that you know, just living in the real world.
Or a world, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Well, dealing with more real world problems, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't believe that anyone ever died in Riverdale of the comics. But in the show, we open with this kid who drowned and a murder. Like they never dealt with that before, and now they deal with it a lot. But I'm just saying, like, dealing with more real world problems as opposed to, I don't know, Jughead, I got 2 girls that wants to go with the prom with me.
I like your version of Archie, but anyway.
I was Moose. I just did Moose, and then,
you kind of did Moose, but with an Archie problem.
Yeah. Well, you know who you should be talking to, Moose? Archie. He deals with this a lot. Like a lot. Like to an absurd level, buddy.
Yeah.
It's just like, but they take those characters and they put them into a new scenario, and that's fine. But like, and I would be fine if he were Superman, but like put into the shoes of being a father. And that's what I was expecting. But for them to just be like, no, he's been a deadbeat dad for 15 years.
Yeah. Also not the best Superman. He also has some troubles as Superman in that episode. Oh, man.
He gets stabbed with kryptonite. I don't know.
Man.
I don't know. But yeah, it's just something that's been on my mind. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So one of the big things that I wanted to kind of talk about this week is I've been supplementing my Snyder watching, getting ready for the release, right? And in that, I've been wholly invested in reading a bunch of comics and then watching like movie versions of them, or like at least like close enough adaptations and things like that, right? Like there is no BV Superman in the comics that I can really truly get into. Well, I guess the early stuff would anyway. But anyway,
well, the Dark Knight thing where they that leads into Justice League. Like, mm-hmm. I don't remember the name of the arc, but like, yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, right. And so like I've been trying to kind of bounce back and forth between stuff involving a huge rewatch of Watchmen as well as like rereading the book twice and things like that. And so I've been trying to shut my brain off otherwise, right? So obviously I'm turning to like the one thing that I can, and that's YouTube, right? The problem is that because of this past year, 2020 was the year where we all realized our dependence on YouTube in a way that we never thought before. And because of that, we are coming out of this with YouTube kind of breaking the boundaries, and specifically like YouTube stars really truly breaking out from YouTube to kind of like invade all other types of media. Like this has kind of been something that's gone on with some of the higher guys in YouTube for a while. Like, you know, like Logan Paul deciding that he's a boxer and things like that, right?
Or Ninja being on The Masked Singer.
Yeah, Ninja being revealed on The Masked Singer is another great example, right? But the other big one that just came out recently is that one of my favorite YouTubers who I've been watching for decades, maybe even, is Rosanna Penzino. Do you know anything about her?
I know nothing. I do not use
So
YouTube at all.
so her YouTube channel is Nerdy Nummies. She started off doing a combination of streaming herself playing video games, but then also being really into baking. And she would always focus her baking on things that were kind of really nerdtastic. A huge celebration of just nerddom stuff. I honestly, actually, one of the first things I found of her was probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Um, that like this is like I had been watching her up to this point, but this was the thing where I was like, oh, I'm going to consume all of her stuff. Was when she started doing she designed her own bakewares, and one of the things that she designed was princess cakes, which, if you don't know, is baking a full cake that is like a dress and then sticking a Barbie doll of some type, and this is super oversimplifying it for what she does, but sticking a Barbie doll of some type into the center of it so that it looks like it is a
The cake
princess
is
with
the
a
dress.
dress
Yeah.
and the cake, right? And what she did is for Captain Marvel a few years ago, she did one of Carol, and it is fucking rad because for so many different reasons, this conversation that Rosanna specifically presents to the world is that argument of nerdiness meets femme, which is something that we really kind of struggled with for a long time. Like, if you were going to be a girl that was into nerd stuff, then you always had to kind of also be a tomboy, was kind of a given. And so the idea that she was able to introduce this whole concept over the last 5, 6, 10 years that she's been doing YouTube, that you can still be super feminine and still be into this stuff, is actually like kind of a big step for this type of fandom. So anyway, so I've been super into watching her stuff for a long time. She does all sorts of stuff. She'll try all sorts of like silly candies with other YouTube stars like iJustine. She'll play video games with dudes like Markiplier and stuff like that. She'll jump in and do like cooking videos with some like really good cooking stuff. And just announced she is officially doing a new baking competition show specifically for HBO Max. HBO Max has filmed and is about to put up a full season's worth of this show that she is now getting to host. And so it is this huge YouTube star taking this huge leap into this season long show on HBO Max to do a show, right? And she's not the only person that's been able to do this. We've talked about YouTube having their YouTube originals and YouTube Red over the last couple of years, and I also throughout this entire pandemic have watched the entirety of the YouTuber Matt Pat had a show called Game Lab where he would take in video game concepts and try and do them in the real world and have like other YouTube stars and other people like show up and do stuff with him. So like he does an entire episode where he tries to work in a Five Nights at Freddy's style place for the night, and like they got this dude that designs those super fucked up horror ghost house where you have to like sign like a
The
contract
waivers.
before you
Yeah.
go in. Yeah, where they're like, hey, yeah, we're gonna like pretend to like waterboard you, so you have to sign this contract to make sure that you're okay with it. Like they got a guy like that to come in and design an actual Five Nights at Freddy's style pizzeria that they then had to try and survive in, right? And like, or another one that's really good is he does a Mirror's Edge one, and he learns how to parkour from this like parkour expert, and then runs a course at the end of it with a bunch of other YouTube stars. So like, so Matt Pat and YouTube kind of paid for that. So it's been a slow evolution, right? Where like you have these big YouTube stars and they get so big that YouTube is like, well, let's do more than just original content with you guys. Like let's put like shows together. And then it became this thing where like no joke, like Logan Paul was like had to go to YouTube and be like, I'm gonna get into a boxing ring with like Floyd Mayweather. And they were like, are you fucking sure about this? And he's just like, yeah, no, I got this. And then it got pushed off because of the pandemic, but they've been kind of keeping up like the kayfabe of the whole thing, to the point where it's kind of become it's more about the story of the two of them interacting than it is about whatever fight they eventually have. Because as has been pointed out by many people, he could step into the ring with Floyd Mayweather and go down in 10 seconds. And at this point, it's still going to be one of the most important stories in boxing ever told, which is fucking crazy that we're talking about this jackass YouTuber that everybody hates, but it is specifically that is that he's going to walk into a ring with a boxer that is not potentially like he's not very loved, but he's also undefeated as far as any fight that's not an exhibition fight. Floyd Mayweather has only ever lost in exhibition style games, so like he's never lost a fight. He's undefeated. So even if Logan Paul steps in the ring with him for, like I said, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and he gets his ass like laid out, that's to be expected. But at this point, it's done. Like people know who he is now that would never know who Logan Paul was, right?
I
And it's
still
just been
don't know
this
who he is, but
Logan. Well, so Logan Paul, I don't know if you know much about the I'm trying to think of the name of it, the Suicide Woods like controversy from a few years ago. He was the one that went into like these woods in Japan that are known for like people going in and like killing themselves and
there are
like
two
filming
movies
stuff.
about it that released in 2017.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so he really kind of rubbed a bunch of people the wrong way by like going in with a film crew and kind of making light of it. Or during the riots that were happening over the summer, like the George Floyd riots, he filmed himself going in and stealing stuff in a mall. And like you can argue with me all you want that like, oh, it doesn't show him taking anything or any of this, but he was still making content that he was making money off of by going into this place and just being like, huh, look, I'm here, guys, like upvote me and I'll stay here longer, like that kind of shit. Like he was still exploiting this situation, right?
Yeah, I'm not too
um
upset I don't know who this guy
yeah,
is.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's the worst. The closest to anything legit that he had done before this was not even him, but he has a brother who is also kind of do some YouTubey stuff, but he found his way onto, I want to say like Bizarrevark or like some Nickelodeon slash Disney show that focused on online stuff, and like so his brother found his way onto that. So they're called the Paul brothers, but really I want to separate out his brother from this because I don't think that guy's great either. But I think that Logan Paul is really kind of the worst offender here. But he is, when people talk about the problems with YouTube stars, like Logan Paul is kind of like the shining example of assholery that people are really referring to. And that's what I mean is he's made it this summer. He has been able to push past YouTube into this whole other level of like uh, of fandom is not the right word, or fame's not the right word. Infamy is really the right word, right? But that has what one of the things that's been really weirdly kind of bubbling under the surface for me this whole summer is that like we've all started paying way more attention to YouTube, and then because of that, like these YouTube quote unquote stars that we used to kind of have to kind of justify why we were talking about them are now stepping into these realms that are like unfathomably they are going to be household names whether we like it or not. And like it's insane to me to think that somebody who started out playing Minecraft for 6 hours a day because they had too much time and too much money on their hands is now going to be this guy that like we now have to talk about on ESPN2 every other month when we inevitably show the fight like at like 2 o'clock in the morning and they don't have anything else to put on. And so it's just been this weird kind of like realization of what I have personally been consuming this summer kind of coming to a head of me realizing that, all of this stuff that we have been talking about, all of this stuff with like streaming services and all of this stuff with us talking about people kind of creating online presences and all this, and how it's kind of blown up this year without anybody paying attention. And so I'm going to be very curious to see like where things go for a lot of these guys once people are not home all the time. I feel like a lot of these people are making really smart, intelligent business moves right now because of kind of where they are and the fact that people have had nothing else to consume. I mean, this even goes over into like the UK, and you want to start talking about like channels like Sorted and stuff like that. Sorted is a food network that is primarily YouTube. But what they did this summer is when things kind of went to shit, and especially in Britain and the way that they handled things, they shifted their entire like focus over to home cooking and meal boxes from local restaurants so that you could like buy all of the ingredients directly from the restaurant to make your favorite meal from them. And they've done like entire series of videos based on making that thing you can't go to the restaurant to get right now. So they've just completely like turned their entire formula on its side. They're still talking about cooking and they're still talking about food and good food and how to make sure you're taking care of yourself, but they're also like doing it as like, while you're sitting at home and locked inside. And like how do they recover from that is going to be kind of interesting. So it's been really, really weird this year as a person who consumed YouTube on the reg beforehand. Like I'm not going to act like I discovered YouTube in the pandemic, but like not really realizing how much it became, for lack of a better word, a crutch in these times, not having anywhere to go and not knowing how to fill the time. Like I can't just walk down to the corner store and grab a candy bar right now. So instead I'm going to watch a 15-minute YouTube video. Like I can't go out and look for good food at a restaurant, but I can watch some videos about good food online. I kind of offhandedly talked about one of my favorite food channels kind of blowing up this summer when Bon Appetit, which was a big YouTube channel, they also have a magazine presence. And what ends up happening with them is they've got this whole YouTube channel that is, I mean, like I said, like this with the pandemic, it's really kind of elevating a lot of people. Like they're feeling like, all right, I'm stuck at home, but I've got this, right? And then all of a sudden, all of the stuff that goes on with the Floyd riots and the ways in which this world kind of deals with BLM and not just Black Lives Matter, but the idea that we start thinking about like otherness and the ways we consume it. Bon Appetit has the bottom fall out on it because a bunch of people that are there, you know, that are not just people of color, but women of color are like, hey, by the way, we make like a third of what everybody else here makes. Oh, and on top of that, they don't pay us for screen time like they do for all of these other stars. And that it just became this huge thing that like that place just disintegrates. And like it's only just started to come back in the last couple of weeks, but not in any meaningful way that has really latched like that. I haven't gone back, right? And it was weird because it was this kind of first instance of the real world kind of invading YouTube for me. And I think it's because we were all suddenly paying so much more attention to YouTube that while it had its issues before, this was the first time it ever came in and like made drastic change, the real world coming into YouTube. And I think almost from that, again, a lot of these really intelligent, business-minded YouTubers who have survived on YouTube because they are so good at reading the room and making the right moves, realized that was kind of their opportunity to start looking outside of YouTube and saying like, look, we've got people paying attention and like trying to make changes here. So what can we do to like kind of get back out there? And it's huge. It's this huge move and shift in the ways in which YouTube interacts with the entertainment industry that I'm really, really excited to see where it goes once we're all kind of out of this, because I don't know if it does. I don't know if YouTube is really in the middle of like a boom right now because we've got nothing else to do. I don't know. I mean, like you mentioned yourself, you've never really watched YouTube in the same ways that I do, and that's fine. Like I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that still don't, but we have a generation of people that grew up on YouTube that are slowly going to be in a position to want more meaningful content. And so YouTube knows that and has been kind of changing its focus, as I mentioned, with like the YouTube originals and YouTube Red and all that, right? But also you have YouTube stars that are going to start kind of realizing like, I want to do more than just make videos 6 days a week. Like I want to produce shows. I want to create content. Now, like one of the guys that I have always touted and is going to be one of the guys at the top of my YouTube playlist all the time is this dude Markiplier, Mark Fishbach. And his big thing is he uses YouTube to make creative content. And I think that was really intelligent for him to do, starting to do 5-6 years ago. But even he is kind of hitting a point where he's not quite sure how he wants to keep going in this. Whereas like you have younger YouTube stars like Rosanna Panzano, who are just Panzino. I got to make sure I get her name right. But she is like looking outside of YouTube to kind of do her thing. And that started a few years ago with her producing cookbooks and making bakingware, and now she has her own cooking show that's going to be on HBO. So like it's kind of cool, and it's something that you and I don't talk about much, and I don't expect us to like turn focus to it much anymore, but I want to make sure that people know that I haven't ignored it and that like it's going to change things and the ways that we consume things.
Yeah, I mean, we do champion ourselves as a show about everything, and this falls into that category. And even though I do not consume YouTube the way that you do, like it's so foreign hearing you talk about YouTube the way that you are. Looking at this pandemic, my father really got into YouTube as like a way to get news about travel because he's unable to travel, but he has his like 4 or 5 travel things who put out a video every day that he watches. And even though it's the same content, he still goes to hear their unique takes on it. So I think one of the interesting things where we're able to see that cross-hatching of YouTube reaching into other media is the fact that YouTube is no longer something your father doesn't understand or your grandfather right. doesn't understand.
Yeah,
it's something that has become synonymous with entertainment for all generations. I can also speak to the fact that the 4th season of American Housewife had Diedrich Bader's character ghostwriting a novel for a YouTube like prank celebrity. And like that's not
Great.
something that like the people who are watching American Housewife, right? Like I don't count, and I understand that I don't count. I'm a freaking anomaly with the shows that I'm into. Like, why would I be interested in like a mother having to be in like a posh neighborhood and dealing with that? But I just consume everything that has interest to me. Also, it's very easy to get to Westview, Connecticut. And I'm quite sad that we're probably still going to be in like the pandemic, because I was up there a year ago. Well, no, yeah, it was a year ago. It was still 2020. And I found a little diner that opened in 1921. And my goal was to be there for the 100th anniversary of this diner. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. But
Yeah.
like the people who do, like my mother, right? My mother is definitely target like demographic for a show like American Housewife. She doesn't know anything about YouTube, and then there's something being delivered every week, a story about an older guy having to learn what it means to be a celebrity on YouTube in order to write a novel, like autobiography about one of those stars.
Yeah, well, and the thing that I think is key here is that it's not just a joke, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just like I'm a YouTube, I make money, like the Chuck Lorre style of talking about it. Like, that's not what it is, right? Is the idea that these are going to be people, these are going to be creators, these are going to be artists that are actually going to influence the ways in which we want to then consume entertainment later on, and they cut their teeth on YouTube. So when we see them do these things on TV, when we see them make movies, when we see them write novels, it's going to be a different, it's going to be a different taste, a different flavor. And when people are trying to figure out, I don't know who this person is, but man, they're really good at this. What did they do before this? And now what it used to be was, oh, they were on TV for 6 seasons on this show that I kind of watched.
Jennifer
Let me go
Lopez
take
was
that
a fly
in.
girl.
Exactly. But now what it's going to be is, oh, they had a YouTube channel for 10 years. Let me go consume a bunch of their YouTube content.
Yeah, it's oof.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. And then like also thinking of about American Housewife. Sorry to keep bringing it up, but just
No.
it reflects everything that you're talking about. Is the fact that Katie, that's the titular American Housewife, her job changes every season, like. And this season, she is trying to become famous on YouTube with a mommy blog. So, like,
Yeah.
it's taking that influence of spending all this time with that YouTube guy and then realizing, you know, I've been a mother, I have advice, and there's a market for this. I now know that this is a viable thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
And right now I know that there's probably people screaming like at us being like, oh, but you're not even talking about this person or that person. And like to tie it back to what we were saying in the beginning about streaming services and about how the biggest issue that streaming service really has is it is making you feel like it's catering itself specifically to you. YouTube has that down fucking pat. You go onto any version of the YouTube app, whether it's on your TV, your phone, your computer, it knows how to feed you content that you want to see. Even if it's somebody that you've never heard of or something you've never heard of, YouTube knows how to work that. And so like it is in that realm the ultimate streaming service, because if I want to watch 2-hour videos of somebody playing video games, I could find playlists upon playlists of that. If I want to find just 5-minute episodes of people running fucking Hot Wheels cars around tracks that they've made, I'm into it. I mean, we did talk about marble racing earlier this season,
Yeah,
right?
Well, not this season. It was last season during the height of the pandemic. Yeah,
right.
Like,
but that's just it, right? Is like that is something that you don't even That's just it. Is you don't even think of it as I'm watching YouTube. You think of it as I am specifically consuming this artist that I like and I'm going to support them. But what you're doing is you're going to a specific service that is making you feel so connected to that, you're not even thinking about Netflix in this equation. How crazy is that? They're making billions off of you, and you're not even talking about it as YouTube. You're talking about it as this marble racer. Like, yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Also, you say that YouTube knows how to cultivate. I feel so bad for my YouTube algorithm because my recommendations like die on the vine. Like I feel like I log into YouTube, I have one video recommended, and I'm just like, that doesn't really appeal to me. That doesn't apply to me. I'm not gonna watch that. but it reflects everything that you're saying, because I don't exist in that ecosystem. That ecosystem doesn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
And when it is so concierge, so like focused in forcing you to watch things that you enjoy, if you're not part of that conversation, how is it supposed to do its job? And also, the only thing that I'm thinking about this whole time is why DMCA has become a bigger deal in the wake of the pandemic. And that's because everybody was at home, and these YouTube people started making money off of existing content, and the people who own that content want their piece of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that has kind of secretly been influenced things for a while, and the pandemic only kind of really showed us how much it's actually been influencing us. And as I said, there's people out there right now that are like, oh, here's all these other channels you're not even talking about. And it's legitimately because there's so much available to us on that platform that like it's impossible for me to have the same YouTube as anybody else. It's amazingly scary and fun and exciting. And in 3 months, it might be meaningless once we're all able to go outside again.
I don't know. Like, I'm worried. Like, I feel like it's become such a like part of my father's day that even when he can go outside again, he's gonna drop into it. Like, he's gonna be my case study, right? To see how this works, because this is a person who never used YouTube before this, and then he found it as a way to supplement what he was missing because he could not go out and travel. And it will be interesting to see if he continues to consume that media once he can go kind of live it on his own.
Right.
It's become a crutch for him, and I don't know, and I'll be interested to see it. Also, I have to admit, when I hear you talk about YouTube, it sounds like you're talking about a foreign country to me. Like, you mention people that, like, maybe I've heard their names in passing, or maybe it's just been from you. And it's kind of overwhelming to me. And I think one of the reasons why I stay away from it as a platform, because I don't know the rules and customs of it in this way that, like,
I can appreciate that. Weirdly, it makes me think of this past weekend. I was trying to explain to somebody like how to play The Witness by Jonathan Blow, and they're like, what do you like? How do you get started in that game? And I'm like, you don't. You walk in, and whatever draws your eye, you go to, and then like the game does a really good job of, like, once you figure out how to do this puzzle, suddenly you see something like that puzzle in another place, and you go, and everybody has a different experience, right? And it's that same mentality of like, it's not geared, like, there's not a critical path. There's not a sense to YouTube of like, here's where you start and then you'll go off. The way that you start watching shit on YouTube is like, you get interested in something not on YouTube and then find your way there one day. Like, oh, I like listening to British people read Harry Potter to me. Okay, well, guess what? There's a YouTube channel for that. Like, I like watching somebody who's gonna like critically rip apart all of the aspects of the Mass Effect series for just like 6 hours. Okay, yeah, I can point you to a guy that does that. Like you find a thing that has nothing to do with YouTube, and you say, this is a thing that I'm really into, and I have 10 minutes on my lunch that I want to like kind of burn through. What do I do? Well, go find a YouTube video about that thing you love, and then the next thing you know, you've watched hours of content based on that one thing. And then when you're like, I'm kind of getting burned out on this, it's okay. By that point, YouTube has learned who you are, and they've got a whole thing to give you from there on. And suddenly you find yourself down the rabbit hole. It is insidious. It is creepy. It is problematic. It is upsetting. It can ruin people. So like, I'm not here to like tout it as like the savior of whatever. Like there are issues with it, but in a time when we are literally being told, do not go outside, do whatever you can to keep yourself inside, and do whatever you need to combat these feelings of you needing to go outside, they had me covered in a way that nobody else was prepared to do.
That's fair. That's fair in a way I would have never even considered. So I do appreciate you walking me down this path on something that I don't understand. And I would also feel remiss if at this moment I didn't remind anyone who's listening to the show that we do have a YouTube page. It's just the episodes uploaded, and we try to keep the very special stuff strictly to podcast services. But if you're not able to listen on your device where you podcast, you can always go on YouTube and find us as well. We're the same report there.
Yeah, or if somebody out there says, I would love to listen, but I don't listen to podcasts, let them know that we are available on YouTube.
Yeah. And that's just the thing. So this is getting long, but I do need to just say my last thing about Cyber Shadow before we don't talk about Cyber Shadow till like June. And then it's very specific why it's June. But I had my one night only tournament, and out of 20 racers, I came in 11th place.
Hey,
so that felt pretty good. And weirdly, and this will maybe be something to get into next week, I've kind of lost my drive to play video games after that. Like, I haven't really immersed myself in a game since then. And it's a weird thing that I've been dealing with. And I'm not quite sure how to like get out of that funk, Sejin.
All right. Well, we'll have to address this. I think you and I will have to tackle this problem.
Right. Well,
because
new Avengers content comes out on Thursday, so maybe that's what I'm looking for.
Maybe.
It's probably not. Let's be honest. And we'll talk about that Avengers content more next Wednesday. But also at this time, I feel like we should probably tell people what the very special episode's going to be about this month, this March 2021. And I feel like you get to share this one based on the personal journey that you've been going down and the soul searching that it's led you to.
Yeah. So we would be remiss on this particular show with you and me, Dev, as particular hosts and host companions. We are gonna talk about the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's that's it. Like I don't know if that lands like a lead balloon for some people because but this is not just because I've been doing my research, and I've not just been doing this research just because of this, but the history of this show, anyone that listens to any past episodes, I am not in love with the Justice League movie. Devin, on the other hand, enjoyed it. I won't put words in your mouth. I won't say that like you thought it was like the best superhero movie and kicked Endgame's ass or anything like that. But there was a level of enjoyment experienced by you with that film that I only wish I could have had like half of.
I can't believe I've seen that movie 3 times in theaters. Like, that's really, like, that's the thing, is that I saw that movie out of a weird sense of commitment, because this show, The Say Report, has always sort of been leading up to the Justice League film.
Yeah.
In like this weird, like, I don't even know how or why it happened, but it became like a central focus of the show in the very early days. So then, like, I had gone to a convention in Philadelphia, and then I got home and went and saw a 10 o'clock showing of Justice League because I felt like I need to see it before we record our episode tomorrow. Yeah. Even though I'm only going to talk about the convention I just experienced, I need to see Justice League. Just to say that I have. And it hit the right way for me. And, you know, maybe it's egocentric. Maybe it's just the nature of the beast. But on a level, I feel personally responsible for the Snyder Cut coming to be. We certainly weren't the only voices that were clamoring for the Zack Snyder cut of this film. And you can actually see us waver from believing that it will never happen to it being a sure thing to just flat out jaws on the floor when it was announced as part of HBO Max package.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, like it's one of the biggest things that we have ever had to trace and retrace, and like, you know what I mean, like it has been in the DNA of this show for a long time, and so we would be remiss to not talk about what is an insane thing that is happening in pop culture in the coming couple of weeks that I feel like nobody else is really kind of looking at with the same side eye that you and I are. Like, you and I have given it its due and talked about how fucking bizarre it is that this is happening, and now we're going to dedicate a whole possibly 2 hours or more to how weird it is. Like, divorced entirely from whether or not it's a good thing, because at this point I couldn't even tell you if it's going to be good or not. I like, a year ago, if you would ask me, I'd be like, well, okay, even if it comes out, it's still going to be dumb. Now, for all from everything I could tell, it could be the second coming of film.
Yeah, this is a big one.
And nobody else is talking about it.
I certainly. Here's the crazy thing. Here's the talking about it that I have found, and that is when it first came out in theaters in 2017, like the marketing that went along with it. Like there was no toy line that came out with that movie, right? Last week it was announced a full line of figures from Justice League. So you're getting I can't think of his last name. Ray Winston, is that his name? Cyborg.
Ray Winston, the special effects artist.
No, see, I don't know. It's well, whatever. Cyborg from Justice League is getting a figure. Flash from Justice League is getting a figure. Like, and that's insane to me. That the Snyder Cut is the one that's getting all the weird tie-in merchandising.
Ray Fisher, by the way.
Ray Fisher, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I feel like
that's why
I know him as Cyborg. It's just like I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe the announcement that like, oh, we're going balls to the wall with figures for this film. Actually, I don't think there's a Wonder Woman. If memory serves and the announcement serves correctly, they showed Darkseid, Steppenwolf, Flash, Batman, Superman, Aquaman. Yeah, and that's weird that there's no Wonder Woman figure in that announcement.
Not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Well, I will say this. It's probably because those guys are all monochromatic.
Yeah. Actually, it's because statistically, women action figures do not sell well.
Again, not truly touching it with a 10-foot pole.
Well, yeah, I get that. But then also, like, you want to take a step before that, they don't sell super well, so they're short-packed. Like, I remember April O'Neil came one to a case with the Playmates Ninja Turtles line that came out, whatever, like 89. And she became one of the most sought figures because you couldn't find her.
Right.
And, like, but everybody wanted an April O'Neil. So, like, it's sort of the Nintendo method of false scarcity in order to make it happen. But I'll need to look at it and I can revisit that. But, like, I remember looking at the announcement and being excited that, like, there's a Cyborg. Oh, my God, Steppenwolf's getting a figure? And now, like, I'm thinking about it. I don't remember seeing Diana at all.
Yeah, we'll address that and more.
Yeah, and more.
In this special episode that's coming out.
But yeah, so that comes out on Thursday as well. You can play the Avengers game, and you can watch the Snyder Cut. I can't believe both things are happening at the same time, but then also I can. And we'll explore that more next episode. And then in our very special episode for March, we're going to dive into the Snyder Cut. And I don't know anything about it. I don't know how long it is. I don't know if it's like episodic or
nobody does.
It's crazy.
the way that they've kind of like muddied the waters on it to basically be like, you want to see this, right? Yeah. How do I see it? We're not going to tell you. Fuck you.
Put aside 1 to 29 hours.
Oh man.
But yeah. So, if you would like to talk to Sejin about YouTube and the future of entertainment, you can find him on Twitter at Siege vs. the World.
And if you want to recommend any specific YouTube channels to Devin, find him at Devin D. Decker and blow up his YouTube spot.
Yeah, I'll check it out, right? I think currently the only thing I watch every week is the Gymquisition. And that's just like, because I like that side of video games.
You know what you would really love is all of the BBC shit that's gone up recently. We talked about Taskmaster, but also like Quiz of the Year and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I love the Quiz of the Year. It's fantastic. But that's for another time. So Will, drag us out of here and bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.